Welcome to the Spirit of Mayberry, brought to you by Research Chief Spirit Walker from an undisclosed location deep within the bowels of the Andy Griffith Show Research Laboratory.
Today is Monday, October 3rd, 2022. The Andy Griffith Show debuted with its very first episode, The New Housekeeper, on Monday, October 3rd, 1960. Exactly 62 years ago today. It amazes me that 62 years after the show first debuted, we're still talking about it. We're still watching it. There's still books being written about it. There's podcasts about it. There's YouTube channels about it. There are people researching it all the time. There are events going on around the world about the Andy Griffith Show. The Andy Griffith Show Rerun Watchers Club has 1,478 chapters worldwide. Tens of thousands of fans gather and befriend each other over a television show, a sitcom that hasn't been on the air since 1968. Why is that? I began this fan cast, this YouTube channel, because I love the Andy Griffith Show, because I research the Andy Griffith Show, because I write books about the Andy Griffith Show. And I want you to share the spirit of Mayberry with me. I want you to understand that there are lessons to be learned. There are idiosyncrasies, sure, but the fact is it was a quality show that provided wholesome entertainment, not just wholesome entertainment, moral entertainment you don't get in this day and age. The purpose of this fan cast is to share the Mayberry spirit with you and encourage you, in turn, to share the Mayberry spirit with others. Now, to do that, I'm going to share with you information that I have gathered. I'm going to share with you information other people have gathered, because nobody's an island. And the Andy Griffith Show was based on relationships. And it was a town where everybody treated everybody fairly and respectfully. That's one of the major lessons we can take from the Andy Griffith Show. And that's one of the lessons I want you to take from this fan cast, is that everybody has worth and everybody is somebody. Treat them like somebody. And as Andy would say, act like somebody. And so that's what we're going to try to do in this fan cast, is share information, trivia, lessons to be learned from the show, behind the scenes secrets of the writers, the actors. This was an amazing program. Now, as Randy, my announcer, said, this is the Andy Griffith Show Research Laboratory, specifically TAGS Research Lab 55. And if you have questions that you would like us to answer, me and the boys at the lab are here to research answers for you. There's a lot of bad information out there on the internet. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation on the internet. You can find it all over. I even have some books that were written quite a ways back, say 1994. And there are errors in that book about the Andy Griffith Show. And we want to set those records straight, and we want to show you the facts. And if we can't come up with a factual, definitive answer, we will give you our opinion. We'll give you several other people's opinions, and you can be the judge. But we are an information center. I mentioned the boys in the lab. The boys in the lab are ready to answer your questions. I'll introduce you to them in a minute, but first let me tell you how to contact us to give us questions. You can contact us at tagsrl55@gmail.com. That's the Andy Griffith Show Research Lab 55@gmail.com. tagsrl55 gmail.com. I talk about the boys in the lab, and I want to introduce you to two of them because in this episode, I wanted to address the question, why are we still talking and watching the Andy Griffith Show 62 years after it first came on the air? And so I asked two of the boys in the lab to give us some video testimony on why they are doing what they do. First, let me introduce you to Alan Newsome. Alan is a great guy and epitomizes the spirit of Mayberry. Alan is a Floyd the Barber tribute artist, but he also has a podcast that has been running every week since 2008. Count it up. He has been broadcasting every week about the Andy Griffith Show longer than the Andy Griffith Show itself ran. He's up to, I think, episode 704. 704 podcasts about the Andy Griffith Show, and he still hasn't run out of things to say. He's also a Floyd the Barber tribute artist. He travels all over the country. There are Mayberry events going on every month somewhere in the United States. And Alan's at a lot of them. He obviously can't make them all, but he's at a lot of them, I promise you. There are tribute artists that dress up like Barney and Goober and Gomer and Floyd and Otis and Ernest T. Bass. They dress up and they have a great time. There is a tribute artist that does Charlene Darling now, and she's fantastic. These people love the show and they want to spread the spirit of Mayberry. And you can go to Mayberry Days in Mount Airy, North Carolina. I just came from there. It was a couple of weeks ago. It is always the last full week of September, so that the Sunday has to still be in September. In other words, if the Sunday is October 1st, that's not a full week as they count it. But I just got back from Mayberry Days, had a great time. Tribute artists all over the place, smiles. Nobody at Mayberry Days once asked me who I voted for. They never asked me any details about my life. We talked about the Andy Griffith Show. We laughed and we were friends. Nobody cared about your race, your religion, or your politics. They were just family. It was fantastic. I'd never seen anything like that. And then I had to come back to the real world. But isn't that why we watch shows? To escape reality. Alan Newsome has been performing as Floyd the Barber at all these big events all over the country. He also is one of the stars of Mayberry Man the movie, which you can find on Netflix, I think, still. And also is filming this at this current time, Mayberry Man the series. And I will spread more news of that later. Floyd the Barber has been recreated by Alan Newsome, and he captures the spirit of Floyd perfectly. So I asked Alan, why do you think people are still talking about and watching the Andy Griffith Show? Here's what Alan had to say.
Hey, Spirit Walker. Thanks for the question. Why are people still watching the Andy Griffith Show after all these years? I think it's because Andy Griffith Show gives us a chance to spend time in an idyllic world where we can forget some of our problems and just forget the world as a whole and enjoy visiting with friends and almost like family. The characters on the Andy Griffith Show are so realistic that it's almost like you knew them. I grew up in a small town. And so in that small town, I knew a lot of people like that, especially like Aunt B and the church ladies that were at our church. Aunt B's friends were much like them. There wasn't actually Andy, but there was kind of some Barneys around. And there's definitely Ernest T. Bass or two where I grew up. But I do think that there's a nostalgia aspect of the Andy Griffith Show that keeps us all enjoying it too, where we can look back at a time that was somewhere we would like to be, where people looked out for one another, that people didn't lock their doors at night because nobody was going to come in and mess with them. Their cars weren't locked. They were just sitting there. Nobody's going to steal your car. That was a time we all dream of coming back. But even at the time the Andy Griffith Show was made, that wasn't actually reality necessarily. It was more a reflection of a time when Andy was a young boy. So even when the Andy Griffith Show was made, there was a sense of nostalgia at that time for a time gone by. So when we watch it today, we share that. And I think that is one of the things we love about it. But I believe it's the characters, Andy, Barney, Aunt Bee, Opie, Floyd, Lawson, even Ernest T. Those characters keep us coming back for more. And I really believe that is the main reason, after all these years, people are still watching.
Alan, I could not agree more. I think every time I watch an episode of the Andy Griffith Show, I recognize an aunt, an uncle, a grandfather, and neighbor, an acquaintance, a friend in school who is just like one of the characters on the Andy Griffith Show. It is such a believable place. It pulls you into a place that makes it feel like it's your hometown. The people were real. It amazes me how many times on Facebook groups, Andy Griffith Show Facebook groups, I see people say, Andy's pants leg keeps getting caught in the top of his boot and it just bugs me to death. You know what? That's real life. Do you know that Andy Griffith himself, when he was asked about that, said that it was a natural thing. It just happened. And yes, he could have corrected it, but it reminded him of his own dad, whose pants leg got caught in the top of his boot when he would stand up. That's what happens with those 3/4 boots. It just happens. And he felt that it made it more realistic if he didn't fix it. Because they wanted Mayberry to be real, to you and me, to be our hometown. Let's hear from another boy in the lab. Another boy. He's not a boy. He is very much a man, but he's one of the boys in the lab. His name is Randy Turner. Randy has been publishing books about the Andy Griffith Show for years. He has a lot of books out. He established a publishing company called Liberty Grove Press LLC that publishes only books about the Andy Griffith Show. You can find his books at mayberrybooks.com. You can also find my book at mayberrybooks.com because Randy is my publisher. He's also the voice you heard at the beginning of this fan cast. But not only is he a publisher and a writer, he established the Andy Griffith Show Ambassadors Club. And you can become a member of his Ambassadors Club for a nominal fee. And every quarter you get an Ambassadors magazine. And in that magazine is information you would not believe. I learned so much from the Ambassadors magazine, and Randy graciously allows me every once in a while to write an article for the magazine. It is a great magazine. You can find that magazine and subscribe to the Ambassadors Club by going to mayberrybooks.com and clicking on the link that says Ambassadors Program. Randy is a fantastic guy. I talked to him all during Mayberry days. We sold books together. We laughed and joked. We ate at the Snappy Lunch together, the famous pork chop sandwich. Randy is, in my opinion, one of the top researchers on the Andy Griffith Show. He gives lectures all over the country about the show, about the filming locations, all the little details of the Andy Griffith Show. His knowledge is just tremendous. I asked him to be one of the boys in the lab, and he graciously accepted. So, Randy, why do you think people are still talking about and watching the Andy Griffith Show 62 years after it first came on the air?
Well, if I had to try to sum that up in one word, I think that word would be quality. Andy Griffith always said the show was based on love and that is obviously an important concept to the core values of the show. But I would argue that if a show was based on love, but it was poorly done, people wouldn't still be watching it more than 6 decades later. Um, and you and I have talked about this, but it just amazes me the quality of the production that they were able to pull off, considering the shooting schedule that they were under. Now, some earlier shows shot even more. The Phil Silver show, commonly called Sergeant Bilko, and I don't remember the exact number, but they were shooting 45 episodes a year. Um, but the Andy Griffith Show, they were shooting 32 when they started in 1960. The color years they went down to 30, but for all the black and white years they were shooting 32 episodes a year. And you compare that with modern shows where they're shooting, in normal shows, I think 22 episodes now, and a lot of the streaming shows are using the European model where they're shooting 6, 10, but they were shooting 32 episodes every year and shooting the episodes in only a 3-day period. And so it's pretty amazing to me the quality that they were able to pull off, in addition to the quality of the writing, the quality of the acting. And I think that's part of the reason, honestly, that a festival like Mayberry Days is still so popular, and an indication maybe of the quality of that show and what it meant to people. There are other festivals. I mean, there are Star Trek conventions. Paramount's still making Star Trek, so you do see those. There's an I Love Lucy festival of a sort. It's really called the I Love Lucy Comedy Festival, and it's headlined by Margaret Cho this year. It's just not really a festival just about I Love Lucy. Where Mayberry Days is, and it's fan driven. And I think Mayberry Days has an advantage in that a big part of the reason that show was so popular, the Andy Griffith Show, was that it was based on a town so much, and people want to see the town that may have inspired it, and did inspire it in part, and that helps. But it's very much fan driven, and where are the Beverly Hillbillies festivals? Where's the Petticoat Junction Festival? Those things aren't around. It's not that those shows were terrible, but I really think it's just the quality of what the people created when they made the Andy Griffith Show. The earnestness, it's sweet, but it's not saccharine. And I think that's really the reason. If I had to sum it up in one word, I would say the show's still around because it was just a purely great quality form of entertainment.
Wow, Randy, great points. The quality of the show was groundbreaking for its day. It filmed, as Randy said, in 3 days. They filmed the exterior scenes on Monday. They went into the studio and filmed Tuesday, and Wednesday they filmed indoors, and they did pickup shots that may not have come out right on Mondays. But they filmed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And by the way, the Desilu Studios, where it was filmed I Love Lucy on Thursday and Friday. And several other shows also did that on Thursday and Friday. And one of the things that the Griffith Show did was allow background actors who didn't make as much money as the people in front of the camera doing the speaking, excuse me, the background actors on the show were able, because of that, to get a full week's work in. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on the Andy Griffith Show, and Thursday and Friday on I Love Lucy, or the other productions that filmed on Thursday and Friday. And they could actually make a living as background actors. And that's why you see Mayberry has so many townspeople. They're background actors. Bruce Bilson, the assistant director, was in charge of decorating the set with people and cars. And by the way, the background actors that brought their own cars to the set that fit the setting for Mayberry, they were paid a little extra money just to bring their car and park it on the street. The Andy Griffith Show helped out everybody. They filmed 3 days a week with sometimes 3 locations. They filmed on the 40-acre back lot that housed the town of Mayberry. They filmed in the Desilu Kahanga Studios in Hollywood, where all the interior shots were filmed, or most of the interior shots. I can't say all of them because as these episodes progress, you'll see that certain shots were shot indoors on the 40-acre lot, but very few. And they also shot at Upper Franklin Canyon Reservoir. So 3 locations. The reservoir was in Beverly Hills. It supplied the drinking water for Beverly Hills. And so 3 days, possibly 3 locations in that shoot, 1 camera. 1 camera. Now, because of that, when you see Andy and Barney go into the courthouse on the 40 acres lot, from the outside, you see them open the door, walk in, and then the next shot, you see them on the inside coming in. Those were shot in 2 separate locations on 2 separate days. And so sometimes the continuity suffered. But this was 1960. This was the 60s. You saw the show one time for the season. And then you didn't see it again until reruns. And then you may not see that particular episode. And then the next season, a whole different set. And so it wasn't like we binge watch everything today. We binge watch. I could watch the whole Andy Griffith Show in a couple of days if I binge watched it, and I have. But back then you couldn't. You couldn't freeze frame and say, "Hey, what was that?" and back it up and look at it again and say, "Hey, something's different from the time they started to walk in the door and the time they were on the inside coming in. Something's different." I can do that now. You can do that now. And you'll find plenty of continuity errors. That doesn't mean that Hazel Hall, the script continuity supervisor, was lax in her job. It just didn't really matter back in the 60s. 1 camera. You know what that means? That means that if there's a scene with Andy and Barney in it, they shot the whole scene in a wide shot, or a 2 shot in this case, where there's 2 of them. Wide shot, you get a much wider view, and a 2 shot is just a close-up of the 2 of them. But let's say you have Andy and Barney in a scene. They would shoot the whole scene with both actors present, talking to each other, doing the scene. Then they would shoot a close-up of, let's say, Andy, just doing his lines and reactions to Barney's lines. They would shoot that in a close-up at a different camera angle. And they'd shoot the whole scene again with just Andy. Now, most of the time, somebody else, a script person, was feeding Andy the lines Barney would have been saying, and Barney may have been on a break. He may have not even been there. It may have been a pickup shot on Wednesday instead of on Tuesday or Monday, whichever, the first shot. Then they would switch the camera angle again, and they would focus on Barney, and Barney would stand there, and he would do the same thing Andy did, and Andy may not have been there. And that's why you have things like Barney, Don Knotts was a chronic smoker. Barney Fife wasn't, but Don Knotts was. And most of the time you can see the outline of a pack of cigarettes in Don Knotts' pocket when he's playing Barney Fife. And there are several times you'll see a 2 shot of Andy and Barney talking and the cigarette outline there. And then you'll see a close-up of Barney and the cigarettes will be gone. In one episode, we'll talk about it later, the cigarettes are gone and his button's unbuttoned. But then it shows the 2 shot and his cigarettes are back in there and the button's buttoned. Because he took a smoke break while Andy was shooting his shot. Do you know how difficult that was? It was amazing that there weren't more mistakes in the show than there were. But talk about quality. The acting was quality. They had some of the best actors you've ever seen. Some of the actors off the show went on to have their own shows, went on to movie careers. Jack Nicholson was in the Andy Griffith Show. Buddy Ebsen, before he was Jed Clampett. There was Bob Denver before he was Gilligan. Even the skipper was on there before he was the skipper. Alan Hale Jr. You see, it was a springboard for a lot of places that other actors could go. And the actors and the writers especially said that if you get a job to write an episode of The Andy Griffith Show, you can pretty much write your ticket to any other sitcom because The Andy Griffith Show was that impressive. The writing was superb, the directing was superb, and one little recognized aspect that was superb was the music. The music was incredible. What sitcom do you know today that has musical background going? They don't. You know why? They have a studio audience. The Andy Griffith Show did not have a studio audience. They did not want a studio audience. Andy Griffith, when he and Sheldon Leonard met about the show, they talked about whether or not to do a live show, and Andy was dead set against it. Even though Andy came from the theater and was, in fact, at that moment appearing on Broadway when he was cast to be Andy Taylor in the Andy Griffith Show, he was appearing on Broadway in Destry Rides Again. He was used to the theater. He had toured with No Time for Sergeants, and he was used to a studio audience, but he didn't want one in the sitcom. Why? Because he didn't want the actors to act to the audience. He wanted them to act to each other, to have real conversations. Right now, there's not a studio audience watching you when you're talking to your friends, right? You talk to each other. The interaction's personal. That's what makes the Andy Griffith Show so believable. The directing, the music, the writing, the acting was all quality. We'll go into detail about a lot of these things in the next few fan cast episodes. I guarantee you want to watch because you will learn so much interesting information about the Andy Griffith Show. But let me tell you why I think we're still talking about and watching the Andy Griffith Show. Because it's our hometown. It is. Think about this. How many times have you just been thinking, daydreaming, sitting around with nothing really going on around you and thought, I wish I could go back in time. I remember a family vacation. I remember a family reunion. I remember going to my grandma's house. How much fun was it? Oh, it was a great time. I remember my aunts and uncles. I remember my mom, who is now 85 years old. But I remember her when she was in her 20s. She was 18 when I was born. So I remember her when she was in her mid-20s. And how lively and spry she was, and how she'd run around, and her and my dad would have ice fights at picnics and stuff with my aunt and my uncle and all my cousins, and my grandma and my grandpa were younger, and they were active, and now they're gone. My mother's still alive, but there's no way she can do what she did then. None of us can. We're older. Time passes. People change. I wish I could go back to that picnic when they were having that ice fight and laugh and have a good time and be a kid again. We talk about the good old days all the time, but what we don't think about is that the good old days were really just the days when we were young, when we were little, when we were kids, when we had no responsibility. We lived in an old beat up house in New Mexico when I was younger, and when it would rain, the roof would leak because it was flat. It wasn't arched. And we used to have to get up there while it was raining, sometimes, with the brooms and sweep the water off the roof. And I thought that was the greatest thing in the world. That was so much fun because I got to get up there with my dad and sweep the roof, the water off the roof. Those are the good old days for me. Now, for him, he was worried about supplying for his family. He was worried about damage to the house. He was worried about all these things because he was responsible. I wasn't. I wish I could go back and sweep that rain off that roof, but I can't. Time has passed. But you know what? When I go back to Mayberry, everybody is exactly the way I remember them when I was little. They're all the same. They're still young. They're still funny. There are many times I wish I could hear my grandfather say a certain thing that he would say, or my dad say a certain thing that he would say. I can't hear him say that anymore, but I can hear Andy and Barney. And I can hear Ernest T. Bass. And I can see the kookiness of my aunts and uncles, my family. It's the Andy Griffith Show. I was born in Roswell, New Mexico. No, I'm not an alien. I don't think. I was born in Roswell, New Mexico, and when I go back now, it's nothing like it was when I was a kid. The house that I lived in, of course, is long gone. It's just a vacant lot now. My first grade school, the end of the block, gone. It doesn't resemble my hometown anymore. But Mayberry hasn't changed. Mayberry hasn't changed. It's exactly the way it was when I was 5 years old. Exactly. And in fact, that's something interesting about the Andy Griffith Show we don't often think about. The town of Mayberry was just as much a character as the people in Mayberry. In fact, Andy and Sheldon Leonard had a conversation later on. I think they said about the third season, where they both agreed that they misnamed the show. The name of the show shouldn't have been the Andy Griffith Show. The name of the show should have been Mayberry, because the town was alive. The town was a character. I love the Dick Van Dyke Show. Love it. I couldn't tell you what New Rochelle, New York looks like, but that's where he lived. I know what his house looks like. I know what his office looks like, but I had no idea how he got to work, what path he took. Love the Bob Newhart Show. Couldn't tell you anything about Chicago. I don't know where his office building was. I don't know where his house, his apartment building was. I don't know any of those things, but I know Mayberry. You could put me in a time capsule right now, send me back into the middle of the street in Mayberry, and I could walk straight to Andy's house. I could walk to the church. I could walk to Walker's drugstore. I could walk to the courthouse, the barbershop, the hotel. I could find it all. I know where it is. I have walked those streets for years. I know Mayberry. You know why? It's my hometown. Just like Ed Sawyer, the stranger in town, in the 12th episode of season 1, when he came into town, he said, I've been taking your local newspaper. I know everything there is about everybody. I know everything there is to know about this town. Why? Because it's my hometown. And that's why we're still watching and talking about the Andy Griffith Show. It's my hometown. I know the show. And so will you. Keep spreading that Mayberry spirit, and I'll see you on the next fan cast when we talk about filming locations, when we talk about all the behind the scenes things. It's going to be exciting. You're going to love it, because we're talking about our hometown. And one thing about our hometown, excuse me, one thing about our hometown, we all experience it differently. And it's okay, because we live it. I thank you.